This lesson, I'm going to talk about the IGBO. As far as the IGBO Israelites are said to have migrated from Syrian, Portuguese, and Libyan Israelites into West Africa. So let me break it down for you. The migration started when the forces of Caliph Muhammad, the last leader of the Umayyads, and his quasi-Arab supporters defeated the Yemeni Arab Umayyads of Syria in 744 CE, sacked the Yemenis and their Israelite supporters from Syria. The Syrian Israelites migrated from the tribes of Dan, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher and settled in Nigeria, where they became known as the Sabbaton Israelites. In 1484 and 1667, Judeans of Judah, Benjamin, Levi, and Zebulonites migrated from Portugal and Libya, respectively, and joined the Israelites of Nigeria. So you had Judeans from Spain and Portugal, just like what I said in the last lesson. Thus, Nigerian Israelites originate from the following 6 Israelite tribes: Judah, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher, and Zebulun, etc. It is interesting to note that most of these 6 tribes are the same tribes Moses repeated their names twice when he blessed the children of Israel. These 6 tribes mentioned above are the house of Judah and the children of Israel. Those remaining 6 tribes not to mention above are the house of Ephraim. There are many IGBOs that trace their lineage to the 12 tribes. There is a group of towns in Enugu and Anambra State in Nigeria called the Wawa people. Most of these people come from Judah and Benjamin. Other researchers investigate that IGBOs conclude that IGBOs came from 3 sources. Some came from Benin, which is true, and the Benin come from Judah. Some came from the Congo River Basin, which means they could have been Judeans and other northern tribes, and hence the relationship with the Efiks and the Bibio, which I'm going to get into for a sec, while some were Judeans that came to present-day Igbo land, which is true with what I just read. Usually the northern Igbo claim Igala, the western Igbo, Onitsha Anioma, claim Benin, and eastern Igbos claim Cameroon Bantu. And when you think about it, for a long time I've been doing research about the Igbo people. And what I conclude and what I realize is that most of the Igbo people never existed in colonial times. And what I mean by that, I might get harsh comments, but you have to think this. Before there was Igbo, they called themselves Ibri. Ibri was the ancient Hebrew word for Hebrew, which means they knew they were Hebrew Israelites. Because, mind you, I have Igbo ties. My mom's father's Dominican. Overwhelmingly, Dominicans come from Igbo land. They're of the tribe of Igbo, Ibibio, Efik, Anang. They're from various tribes of the eastern region of Nigeria, Cameroon, and northern Gabon. So I do have Igbo ties. Partial. But in colonial times, there was no such thing as Igbo. If I were to talk to my Igbo forefather and mention, are you of the Igbo tribe, he wouldn't know what I'm talking about. Because most of these tribes for today, colonizers named these tribes northern Gabon. So I do have Igbo ties. Partial. But in colonial times, there was no such thing as Igbo. If I were to talk to my Igbo forefather and mention, are you of the Igbo tribe, he wouldn't know what I'm talking about. Because most of these tribes for today, colonizers named these tribes just to divide division among other tribes that they were related to. Igbo are related to the Yoruba, the Igala, the Edo, the Jukun, the Bini, the Edo, the Yoruba, the Ishikuri. All Volta Niger tribes. Most of southern and central Nigeria are Israelites. So yes, and what I mean by that is that Igbos, there was no tribe called Igbo, they were called Ibri. And most of these groups were people from different areas. Northern Igbos came from Igala land. Western Igbos came from Benin. And I heard in researchers say that they're Igbo anthropologists, Igbo researchers that I came across say that 1 or 2 out of 4 Igbo people would have Benin lineage, which is true. Because Igbo wasn't a legitimate tribe back then. It was a group consisting of other neighboring peoples. Northern Igbos came from Igala. Western Igbos came from Benin. And Eastern Igbos came from Cameroon, Bantu. So just like what I was saying, there was never an Igbo ethnic group prior to colonialism. The Igbo people were there but didn't see each other as one united people. If you were to ask any Igbo in the ancient world, just like what I said to you about if I met my Igbo forefather, if they were Igbo, they would tell you, no, I'm whatever in whatever village they come from. But those guys are Igbo and point to the next closest village. Igbo was a term Igbos used for others around them, but not themselves. Till this day, the Ikweri, another tribe which claimed to be Asher, maintained this mentality. Higher degrees of fragmentation and diversity are signs of a longer presence in an area. Africa has the most ethnic divisions in the world because humans have been there the longest of all continents. The Igbo were simply held together loosely by a similar language, trade, and faith. Mind you, they were all Israelites at the end of the day. They were all Israelites. They were all related because they spoke the same language. It's only due to different times they migrated. They didn't all migrate at the same time. You had other groups that migrated at an earlier time, and you had another group that migrated later at a later time. The Igbo ethnic group was essentially formed by trading patterns and the spread of a common religion and not a common origin. So my theory is true for some Igbo, but not all so were Delta natives. Some may have come from Benin, just like what I said, and so forth, but the market day culture and spread of ideas turns a people Igbo. A lot of Igbos were sent into the slave trade. A lot of them. Most of them, you'll only find a few in like Brazil or any of the Spanish areas. The only significant amount of Igbos sent into Spanish-speaking colonies, so I would say, would be Dominican Republic, Cuba, Puerto Rico, and so on. Mostly the Spanish Caribbean. You'll only have one out of many in Brazil or any country that would have it. Most Igbos were sent to the Caribbean, mainly the Anglo-Caribbean islands and the United States. Especially, a lot of Igbos were sent to Virginia, Maryland. Colonizers even called it Igbo land because of the significant amount of Igbo slaves sent there. And between 1810 to 1820, 137,000 slaves were sent from Virginia, Maryland, and North Carolina to states like Alabama, where my granddaddy from, Louisiana, Mississippi, Texas, etc., mainly to southern states. Other researchers say that the Igbo, which is another trick, because Igbo are a group of many Israelite tribes. There's another section where it says that the Igbo, there are a section of the Igbo that come from the tribe of Judah, who left Israel when idolatry imposed on the Israelites by King Salmanasar of Assyria around 718 BC. They left for an unknown destination in search of a place to worship the one true holy God in 638 BC. And if you heard of the Aro Chaku, the Aro people, they are not of the lineage of Erodi. Some of the lineage with Igbo saying they're Eri Erodi is kind of false because when they say Eri migrate to Igbo land, that's hard to believe. And the reason why, they should rephrase it as in the people who migrated there were descendants of Eri instead of Eri. Because if you look at the time Eri was born, how can Eri live around BC time and migrate to Nigeria around 900 AD? That doesn't make sense. It might as well you say descendants of Eri instead of the progenitor Eri. But beside that, the Aro Chaku, the Aro people are descendants of Levites, primarily of Aaron lineage because they practice the priesthood. They are the priesthood in Igbo land and Nigeria. And also the Aro Chaku, the Aro people are a mixture of Igbos and Ibibio. Just to let you know. But more about the Igbo and the slave trade. The role of the Igbo in North America, given both the size of Virginia's slave population and its function as a leading source of slaves for the domestic slave trade, was clearly critical. The domestic slave trade within the United States did not begin, as is often assumed, with the abolition of the transatlantic slave trade in 1807. It originated half a century earlier in the late 1760s and overlapped with the trade from Africa. It was extensive even between 1787 and 1807, a period in which more Israelites were forced to these shores than in any 2 decades in North American history. The domestic slave trade continued into the 1860s and displaced some 1.2 million men, women, and children, the vast majority of whom were born in America. So yeah, even by the 1790s, Maryland, Delaware, and Virginia had become the... So Igbos were sent into slavery. They were highly recommended, amended in Virginia particularly, and especially the Caribbean islands. You can research it yourself. I'll even show you the slave embarkment with each place. Now, another research, Maryland, Delaware, and Virginia had become the main exporting areas, the bulk of their shipments going to Georgia, Atlanta, Georgia, Tennessee, Kentucky, the Carolinas, and the sugar planting regions of Louisiana. So Igbos were sent into slavery. They were highly recommended, amended in Virginia particularly, and especially the Caribbean islands. You can research it yourself. I'll even show you the slave embarkment with each place. Now, another researcher says that there was a second wave of Gadites and possibly other Israelites. They passed through Egypt, which Israelites normally did, Libya and Sudan, and eventually camped at the Chad Basin in northeastern Nigeria. From there, some settled around Zaria, Benue, Igala, Idoma, Uburu, and the Delta region. Some went as far as Cameroon. See, so even with that, it means that Cameroonians and Nigerians, and when I mean Nigerians, specifically southern and central Nigerians, the ones who carry E1B1A, they're the same people, they're Israelites. There was no such thing as Nigeria, Cameroon, Ghana back then. Well, Ghana, it's different. Ghana was called Empire of Ghana, but that was in Upper Guinea, Mali region. It wasn't in present-day Ghana, but then there was no such thing as Nigeria, Cameroon back then. They were pretty much the same land. And I'm not doubting that Igbo are not Gadites. Of course they're Gadites, but they need to fix their Eri story for me to make another video about them, which I'm planning on doing. Mind you, a large section of the Igbo population that live in the western part of the Nigerian Igbo state of Anambra, they are descendants of Eri, one of the sons of Gad. If you really study scripture, they are, but they really need to fix their story of them saying Eri migrated. It's impossible for Eri to migrate, and he's the grandson of Jacob. Alright? And they need to end this beef between them and Yoruba land, like southwest Nigeria and southeast. Because if you're looking according to scripture, it says that Judah will be vexed to Ephraim, and Ephraim shall envy Judah. Now, the kingdom of Judah is pretty much southwestern Nigeria, which is the Yoruba, the Bini, Edo, and other Oduduwa tribes. While in the eastern region, such as the Ibibio and other tribes, they're of the northern kingdom of Israel, which is Ephraim. In terms of Igbo, Benai Israel, there are three possible methods from which their Israelite ancestry arrived within West Africa. So, one is early Israelites and migrations west from the Arabian Peninsula, Egypt, Ethiopia, Kenya, and Sudan. If you study every tribe in Africa like I do, most Israelites trace their lineage back to these areas of where they migrated from, and then from there they went to a specific country in Africa. Second is through trade and travel of North African Jews within the West African Kingdom.